I'm carrying a secret I'm not proud to admit. I love playing SUPERVIVE, so much so that I decided to turn down multiple job offers fresh out of college to be a full-time degenerate grinding the game whenever I get the opportunity to, instead of chasing that 9-to-5 bag and talking to women. That's because they scare me. But you know what scares me more? All of the time I wasted at the start of my SUPERVIVE journey by focusing on the wrong concepts, leaving me stuck for way too long and holding me back from truly improving. Now, I have reached top 10 consistently on the ranked leaderboard and have even took home a tournament win with the boys, Lemur, Phenom X, and Abador. But again, I wasn't always a great player. I started as a filthy Overwatch-brained crayon eater that never played a top-down game in my life. But the only way to the top was to lock in and improve. So today, let's talk about everything I learned and how I would go about mastering SUPERVIVE as a brand new player. The first step to learning the game of SUPERVIVE is to forget trying to apply the philosophy of the game you have previously played to this one. SUPERVIVE is a mix of a bunch of different games, and if you approach the game from a single lens, you are going to struggle. SUPERVIVE is beautiful because it is unique and one of a kind. Don't be like me and be too Overwatch pilled from the start. You have a clean slate, so why not use it? Now that we are giving SUPERVIVE a fair chance, it is important to understand that there is a lot that you have to learn before you can really start to compete. I split this into 3 different categories: hunters, items, and powers, 2 of which these topics have already been covered on the channel, items and powers. Let's first discuss hunters though, and how you should go about finding your hunter of choice. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is to go into practice tool before you play any game and go through all of the characters to see what you like and what you don't. Then take a list of your 3 favorite hunters and try to focus on those for a few games. At the end of the day, prioritize what you enjoy and what you have fun with, because that is what is going to help you to continue playing the game for the long term and thus improving more. But if I had to give you more competitive advice, you should really pick a side of the screen and stick to those characters. For example, I am more committed to hunters on the right side of what you see on the screen. These are more supportive and control-centric characters compared to the damage characters that just want to frag out. These characters I enjoy and are much more in line with what I am skilled with. If you have 3 characters you like and you stick to them, this will help you really learn how to fight and allow you to be comfortable with the controls and movement. Speaking of movement, this is something that I wish I would have known since game 1. It is probably the most important skill to improve on when you first start playing because it will prevent you from getting spiked constantly, which, well, happened to me a lot more than I'm willing to admit. The very first skill you should learn is mantling, which is where you jump into the abyss, make contact with a cliff, and then launch yourself up. This will allow you to pull out your glider less, keeping you alive for much, much longer. When you are ready to learn the deeper mechanics of movement, check this video out. I wish I knew this before I started. Let's move on to items though. The items in SUPERVIVE are really important, and if you are anything like me, my Overwatch brain pushed off learning the item system for months until I finally started thinking about them. Don't do that. They influence the combat in this game quite a lot. The Learn tab in the main menu is going to prove as a very useful resource for you to use. This is mostly because the item system is constantly going to change in this game, with new iterations and balancing updates. What is super strong one patch might not be as good another patch, so I can't really just tell you what is and isn't great. Instead, I can give you ideas on how you should think through items. The key to it is simple. Take a look at the hunter you are trying to build for, take them into practice, start warming up with some cooldowns, and then ask yourself, what am I really trying to achieve with this hunter? This is going to depend on the patch as well. For example, a character like Zeph usually wants to keep his team alive and have his cooldowns pretty readily available to do so. In order to do this, he needs a lot of mana and wants to reduce his cooldowns. Knowing that his healing scales with how much damage he does, or his AP, this rules down to 2 options, the Mana Blade and the Tech Blade. From here, you can pick options like Bubble Blade to give your team more effective HP, or the Tech Blade that allows you to keep your powers when you are eliminated if you open 2 vaults before then. This way of thinking isn't perfect, but it sets you up to effectively theorycraft instead of just picking random items without much thought. I used to do this until very recently, and when I finally talked to Aiden BY, shout out to the guru of all SUPERVIVE items, the game felt a lot easier, and I found a lot more success as a result. Once you have given yourself time to think through every system and achieve a base understanding, now you can navigate all of the powers in the game. To be honest, learning this system was much easier for me because it just came down to using them and learning them over time. Eventually, even a caveman brain like me could figure out the powers that were good on what character. The more important thing about powers is just to remember that you have them and find ways to use them throughout every single fight. If you have extra buttons, you need to use them. because if the enemy does and you don't, the odds you lose the fight exponentially increase. The way I constantly remind myself to use powers throughout a fight was that I literally set up a beep every 10 seconds to remind myself that I had powers in the middle of a fight to at least look at what I have. I may have gone crazy by the end of the third day of playing, but guess what? I never forgot about powers again. So if that is the distance you have to go to use your buttons, do it. The last thing I would focus on learning when first starting to play the game, and something I wish I did right away, is to look at your map and all of the information that is given to you. It is something I still need to get better about. Looking at your map when you aren't doing anything can tell you so much, like where teams are with their base camps, and even more importantly, the Night 1 bosses in Vanegrove and Prisma Falls, as well as the souls that drop on the map. Simply get into the habit of going for one of these bosses every game that you play, because these powerful power spikes are what is going to win you games. Before I just walked around looking for fights, but getting objectives is so much more important and will often lead to team fighting anyway. This also goes for in the middle of fights even. Get into the habit of looking at your minimap at the top of the screen. You'd be surprised at how many enemies you will find flanking on you mid-fight with just one glance. When I started doing this, I started getting eliminated a whole lot less and found a lot more opportunities to pop off in the middle of fights. But all right, let's take a step back and review everything we've talked about so far. The step-by-step process starts with learning what hunters you want to play, committing to them, learning how to pilot them, then understanding items and power systems. After that, we can fuse it all together in order to fight for important objectives around the map and win games. But what does that leave us? But Mr. YouTuber, I've done all of these things. Why am I not rank 1 yet? Well, because it's just not that easy, and I wish it were when I first started. But at the end of the day, it is a slow grind. Make sure you give yourself time between each one of these steps before you move on to the next one, because skipping steps will only hinder your improvement. Instead, record your gameplay every week and watch over it at least once a week to see your progress on each step and see what you could be doing better to understand every system. If you have questions, ask around the community. There are a vast amount of strong players that are happy to help as well. If I were to tell you my #1 biggest regret from when I was first starting, it was that I was not watching my gameplay enough. I was complaining about other factors out of my control instead of focusing inwards and really honing in on what I could do more. Could I get more out of my hunter in this situation? Am I running the most optimal items for every scenario? Was there a way that I could have used my powers better? What if I told my team to go for one boss over another? All of these questions are nearly impossible to answer in the moment. You have to give yourself grace to take a step back and truly improve. Take your time, fall in love with the process, and then and only then will you begin to understand your true potential. Hopefully this video was helpful to you all. Make sure to look at each of the individual catered videos from every single topic that we have discussed to maximize your improvement, and stick around for the ride while subscribing. Thank you guys all so much for watching, but until next time, I've got to peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.